But today we will be talking about the power of awareness. And awareness, of course, is the essence of what mindfulness is all about. Our human capacity to be aware of what we are aware of and how much difference that can make in our lives. Since I don't believe that I've told the story of the awakening night of Siddhartha Gautama to this group before, I thought this might be a good day to share it. Siddhartha Gautama was a prince in an Indian kingdom back in 500, the year 500 before the Common Era. And he had been very cloistered in his upbringing. His father especially had wanted to protect him from any of the difficulties and challenges of life. But eventually, Siddhartha got out of the castle and wandered about the community. And the first person he saw was very sick. And he was quite surprised and upset. The second person he saw was very old. And he had no idea that people could get so old. And the third person he saw was actually a corpse, a dead body. And so here he was in these first few moments, being outside of this cloistered existence, being exposed to these three challenging realities of life. We all get old, we all get sick, and we all eventually die, as does everyone we love. And so he made a commitment to himself to become awake to the world's realities. And he left home, and he initially began practicing asceticism as a way of trying to understand the realities of life. Well, he took it to such an extreme, along with others, that he nearly died, and nothing productive happened for him. And so he decided that he would abandon asceticism and pursue a different approach. And he chose the simple approach of contemplation, of becoming an observer of his own experiences. And he committed to sitting until he became awake. And this went on for some time, and eventually, one night, as he was sitting under the Bodhi tree in Deer Park in northern India, he was visited by the horror show of Mara, who in that culture is what we would think of as the devil or Satan. And Mara was quite annoyed that this man was choosing to sit and contemplate and not yielding to the temptations and the terrors that Mara offered. And so Mara committed that night to tempting Siddhartha so extremely, to terrorizing him so extremely, that he would give up this business of contemplation and yield to temptation and fear. And this went on for many, many hours, and Mara became increasingly frustrated at Siddhartha's unwillingness to yield to any of the temptation or terror. In fact, from Mara's perspective, Siddhartha was simply indifferent, because, of course, Siddhartha was sitting there in contemplation, observing these experiences without getting caught up in them. And finally, Mara got especially annoyed, and he said to Siddhartha, "Who do you think you are?" And Siddhartha calmly reached down from his sitting position with his right hand and touched the earth. And in that moment, he became awake. He grounded himself with the earth. After all that contemplating, he simply grounded himself in the present moment. And in that moment, he became awake, fully awake, so that he was aware of how life was. One observer said, like the Buddha's seeing Mara, much conditioning shuffles off, powerless. Once it is seen and fully understood, the work is to know the conditioning, not to hide from it or fight it. And of course, the conditioning that's being referred to here are what we call the 4 conditions of being human that are beyond our control, and what happens next is up to us. So this morning, I'd like to talk a little bit about the 3 aspects of awareness that really give it its benefit, its value, and its power. The first is that when we are in full awareness, when we're fully awake, everything is reduced to only what it is. We are no longer adding our own perceptions, our own fears, our own wishes and wants. A storm is just a storm. A new car driving by is just a vehicle on its way somewhere. The possibility of getting sick or growing old is just that possibility. We don't layer anything onto it. So let's do a little reflection around this. And taking a moment to recall a time when you were worried about something, how something might turn out, something that was upcoming in your life, and it was likely to not turn out well, and you got worried about it. Just recalling the specifics. And noticing this inevitable human tendency to fall into what-ifing. What if this happens? What if something else happens? Well, if that happens, then something else might happen. And when we recall this instance and think about our tendency to what if, now think about what actually happened. Think about how infrequently the worst of our what-ifing actually happened. And even in those instances, when the worst of our what-ifing did happen, recall how you were able to cope with it, figure it out, learn from it, and go forward. The second power of awareness is that it enables our understanding of our conditioning, of these 4 conditions of how our brains and nervous systems have evolved, of how our genetic composition has affected who we are, how the experiences that we've had in our lives, especially those when we were young, have affected who we are, how the social and cultural norms of our life have affected who we are, and most importantly, how each of these 4 conditions is in fact beyond our control. And what happens next is still up to us. We still can make choices. So taking a moment now and recalling an early life experience that shapes how you perceive experiences today, or how you react in the moment today. We all have them. There's not a human being alive, or who ever lived, who wasn't strongly influenced by conditioning when he or she or they were young. And each of you has been practicing mindfulness and awareness enough to realize how there have been those moments when you're fully aware that this conditioning was beyond your control, and how that has changed its control over you. You have your own experiences with conditioning that prompts reactivity, and yet you're able to step back, be aware of it, and have it no longer be in control of you. The third power of awareness is that it creates the space. With this simple awareness itself, being in observer mode, we create the space for cultivating the other characteristics of our enoughness. Our capacity for self-regulation, our capacity for learning, our ability to avoid that which is harmful and approach, connect with, belong to that which is of benefit to us. When we have this space that arises out of awareness, then we can cultivate each of these four characteristics that are physiologically with us, that have been there from the beginning, and that can put us in a place of having so many more choices about how our lives are. This is the power of awareness. Let's do a little practice with it. Beginning by settling in your own way, whatever works best for you, perhaps some deep breaths after all this cognitive processing. Feeling a sense of dignity and rising up in the body on the in-breath, followed by settling in on the out-breath. Resting comfortably on the surface you're sitting on. And directing your attention to your breathing. Becoming aware of your breathing process and experience. Feeling your breathing in your body. Knowing what it is like to be aware of your breathing. And now expanding your awareness to your whole body. Doing a gentle body scan from the top of your head, slowly, step by step, all the way down to your feet. Being aware of this fully embodied presence in this moment. letting thoughts come and go, letting emotions come and go, being aware in this moment of this experience.